Welcome, everyone. It's the afternoon here in Los Angeles. Um, the sun is the sun's not out. It's a partly cloudy day here in evening or afternoon. Sorry, in Los Angeles, evening on the East Coast. Um, yeah, lots going on in the world. I've been writing a lot. For those of you who subscribe to me, you can probably see that. Paying attention to two, the three main threads, I guess, for me this week. I've been thinking about on one hand, we have the geopolitical situation. I've been trying to really pay attention to what's been going on in Eastern Europe, particularly given the Ukrainian successful Ukrainian attack, Operation Spiderweb, which I put a piece at on today. Also deeply concerned with developments in the Taiwan Straits and paying careful attention there to the tensions as they've been rising. Thought about writing about that, didn't end up writing a piece on that. This is the thing. I'm a pretty unhinged consumer of information, so I'm always just trying to understand what's going on. It's basically all I'm doing. Um, in my sort of post Silicon Valley executive sort of whatever this midlife crisis that I'm going through, that's actually a very real crisis for all of us. Um, yeah, I do think that we need to pay more attention to the geostrategic situation in the Pacific. I think most of the world has not woken up to the danger that's actually there. I think it will arrive on our doorsteps, whether we like it or not. But today, on our to our east, looking towards Western Europe, and then into the east of Europe, Ukraine. Um, this Operation Spiderweb that they planned for 18 months. This is a hurrah. Uh, these bombers that the Ukrainians destroyed, just so you understand, uh, they are used as flying platforms for launching cruise missiles towards Ukraine. So, if you're not really familiar with the defense technology here, Russia has these. I can't remember the names of them. I could look it up if it mattered that much, but it doesn't. But they have these cruise missiles. Cruise missiles are uh, for those who aren't really into wars and explodey things, are missiles that can travel hundreds of miles to precision hit a target. The United States has these. Europeans have these. Um, they're they're pretty advanced weapons. They you basically, someone on a computer basically tells the missile, blow up this building here, and you can launch it from 600 miles away, and the cruise missile will fly the 600 miles, and it has little sensors on the front of it, and GPS and cameras, and it identifies the target and it destroys it. That's what cruise missiles are. And Russia terrorizes Ukraine. They target their energy infrastructure in particular. Ukrainians have been really struggling to keep their electrical grid um, online. Literally, the country has massive electricity shortages. Most people don't realize this. The Ukrainian people um, are showing what resilience looks like, because they have to ration electricity given the constant attacks on their power plants by these Russian cruise missiles, which are launched from these very planes that Ukraine uh, successfully destroyed. What might appear to be as much as 60% of Russia's entire strategic stock of these planes, upon which these cruise missiles that were destroying Ukraine's civilian infrastructure. were being launched from. So, this is, yeah, I mean, this is 10 cheers for the Ukrainians, for their ingenuity, for the moral clarity of targeting this capability of the Russians. Now, it also turns out that these bombers, and this is where, you know, pieces of shit like David Sachs and John Mearsheimer will got all up in arms about this being some sort of irresponsible escalation, can also be used for launching nuclear cruise missiles in the event of a nuclear war. This is part of Russia's nuclear deterrent. We have these types of bombers too in the United States, like, stationed in Hawaii and in Okinawa. Um, uh, and so the theory goes among these so-called foreign policy realists, is that, if you make the Russians worried that they won't be able to use their nukes in a future nuclear war, that you'll force their hands to start a nuclear war now. This is sort of the realist logic here, and so they likely will say that Ukraine has engaged in an irresponsible escalation here. This is nonsense. Um, I actually think the risk of Russia starting a nuclear war, personally, is is a lot lower than people think, and for reasons that have, like, actually nothing to do with, like, Putin's psychology and everything to do with the structure of his regime, the regime that he's built around himself. One of the problems with the regime, like the Putin regime, and this is increasingly becoming the problem with Xi Jinping's regime in Beijing, um, within the CCP, is these authoritarian leaders tend to, and we're seeing this happening with Trump as well, by the way. So, but we'll come back to Donald Trump. He's, of course, our proximate concern here as Americans. But in the sort of the foreign authoritarian arena, the problem that these dictators create for themselves is they sort of they become cornered rats of a sort, right? You make yourself the most powerful person in the country. Doing that, you're going to make a lot of enemies along the way, internal enemies. I mean, like, it should be known, right, that in China and in Russia, there are people that, like, want Putin and Xi Jinping dead. Like, these people exist, right? Like, Putin and Xi Jinping have both sidelined people and sidelined factions, and there's been, like, power games behind the scenes like this. I mean, the fact that Xi Jinping basically purged the Shanghai Gang from the Chinese Communist Party, I mean, that has probably created a lot of enemies. There's probably a lot of people who are really angry about that, people who would like to see Xi Jinping dead. Now, that doesn't make those people good, by the way. It doesn't mean that they're on our side. They're just like, this is the sort of nature of competitive authoritarianism. This is another group of people that represents another set of interests, and views, that would simply just like to have the power that Xi Jinping has. So you can't. But I mean, there's always obviously the opportunity for reformers. They do happen. We did get Gorbachev in the Soviet Union, but the point in, like, talking about this, and this is, like, how to, like, sort of maturely and, like, intelligently understand these foreign regimes, is to really think about the psychology of what it's like to be the guy at the top. Because if you're the guy at the top, like, Xi Jinping obviously understands that, like, people in the Shanghai Gang want him dead. Like, he understands this. So he's got to worry about the fact that, people in the Shanghai Gang that have been sort of, like, purged from the echelons of power in Beijing are going to be doing everything they can to sort of, like, bend influence in and around, like, Xi Jinping, and that's, like, threatening. And so often what ends up happening, and this has happened in the Kremlin, to an extent which is, like, far more advanced than has happened in China, like, thus far. Although China is, like, moving in that direction. we're actually moving in that direction quite quickly. Um, is you eventually start just like preferring loyalty to competence, because you might want to have like the most competent minister of defense or defense secretary or director of war or whatever name you give to that guy. But if you're picking him for his competence, but he's not completely loyal to you, that like maybe he's like, maybe I actually think those Shanghai gang guys had a point. That's like dangerous to someone like Xi Jinping, and so he can't necessarily go with the most competent person. So and Putin has really like boxed himself in this, right? He had the revolt with the Wagner Group people. Like, there's people who want him dead, right? Uh, and so that creates like a really like interesting situation as it pertains to sort of the nuclear threat. Why? Well, because there's going to be a lot of people around Putin that um, are there for very cynical reasons. That it's a very transactional relationship. And if Vladimir Putin and his sort of like, whatever it is, his sense of like restoring like lost Russian greatness from like the past czarist age and like, the age of Catherine the Great or whatever the fuck's going on in Vlad's head. I mean, and he says like, guys, like we need to like fucking launch nuclear weapons at the United States. I mean, he's gonna have a lot of people around him that are gonna be like, wait a second, like I really like driving my Ferrari around fucking Moscow. I don't want this to happen. And you could imagine like Vladimir Putin getting shot in the back of the head like before something like that happens. So so one of the issues that I think that Putin has, that I think a lot of people in the West don't appreciate, is he surrounded himself with like cynical, evil fucking people that don't necessarily have a death wish, which limits Putin's policy options in a sense, right? I mean, he's sort of like boxed them in, right, with sort of this, by tying himself to the ultra nationalists, but he also has to rely on this sort of competent elite, which is sort of like, a little bit more Machiavellian, like maybe not like completely aligned with him. They may have like very complex sort of like considerations around how they're thinking about like a post-Putin future. So I think for these reasons, like I think this idea that like Putin is just gonna like, push the suicide button on the human race in response to Ukrainian escalation is just like not that believable to me. And this is what you get, right, when you actually like like take the time to like understand things, right, rather than having this sort of like reductionist sort of like quick heuristic view of like thinking about like Russia as Putin. And you'd make the same mistake about thinking about the United States as Trump. I mean, the United States is not Trump, right? Like we have courts that are like standing in his way. He has incompetent people around him that don't know what the fuck they're doing. And so they can't like, they can't efficiently like do the things that he wants to do. And so you have to understand these dynamics. If you're going to like actually like think about risk, and you're actually going to think about how you uh, ultimately like arrive at something that is a legible and good strategy. Try not to use the word good, but it came out anyways. So yeah, my view is and has been for, I mean, since the beginning, that the West has been way too tepid with Ukraine. I mean, the fear that if we gave them long range weapons and let them strike deep within the heart of Russia, that would lead to nuclear war. Well, like some of these bombers were destroyed 4,000 miles from the 4,000 kilometers. Not miles. Be like what would that be, like 2,700 miles or something, from the Ukrainian border. And Los Angeles and New York are still here. They haven't been vaporized by by Russian thermonuclear warheads on top of intercontinental ballistic missiles. So I'm not sure I'm not sure that John Mearsheimer and David Sachs' warnings, such as they have been over the last 2 years, have shown to have any predictive power. I would suggest that my more sophisticated take on the nature of Putin's maneuverability and his options in terms of what he can and cannot do, given the nature of the elite power structure that he has constructed for himself, which is, a little bit cornered rat syndrome, actually, limits his ability, even if he was a complete psychopath, to escalate to that point. Because, if he gives the orders to the Russian rocket forces, I think they call them there, or whatever, to bring about the end of humanity. Um, I mean, what people think that, like, everyone in the chain of command is just going to, like, blindly follow that order. So I think I just think um that's a risk that just kind of gets, like, completely overplayed. And the Europeans are, of course, like, terrified of this. And this is, like, really limited, um, the support that they've been able to receive from the Europeans and the Americans. I mean, the British have been the most sort of, like, wildcat about it. Like, they gave, what was they gave them access to the Storm Shadow missiles, the cruise missiles, um, which which actually, like, they're intermediate range, but we wouldn't even give them missiles that would go that far as the British did. So the British have been kind of a little bit more hardcore than we have been. The European, Western Europe has been, like, way more tepid until recently, right? Now the Europeans, as a result of the attack on Kiev, have sort of removed some of the restrictions um, on targeting. But I mean, like, it does have to be said that the posture of Western capitals towards Ukraine for the past, since the beginning of the war, has not been one in support of Ukrainian victory. It's been one in support of, as other foreign policy analysts and strategists will tell you, is one of Ukrainian sovereignty. So, the Biden administration and NATO has been kind of committed to Ukrainian sovereignty. That's sort of the strategic way in which they think about it. What does NATO mean by that? Well, what they mean is that we're willing to make sure that Ukraine is still a sovereign nation. We'll give them enough to make sure that they're still sovereign. That says nothing about how much territory they'll have left at the end of this war. That's the ambiguity that Paris, Berlin, London, and DC, um, have sort of sat in. I mean, and they still are there, even with these, like, even with the Europeans taking their targeting restrictions off and saying that you can hit targets in Russia. That doesn't change the fact that there's actually far more advanced weaponry that the Europeans could transfer to Ukraine, like, tomorrow, that could make a pretty big difference in terms of Ukraine's ability to precision strike, military capacity, and military industrial capabilities, within Russia. And the Europeans won't do that. They're scared. They're terrified of that escalation, and they really shouldn't be. I mean, I think the reality is that Russia doesn't have any choice at this point but to escalate, and that's why everything has happened the way it's happened, right? Um, Russia didn't take Trump's peace offer, which was what everyone assumed Russia wanted, right? Which was like a ceasefire at the lines of control. Like, it sounded like Trump was even willing to recognize Crimea, which would have been a fucking outrage, by the way. But even that wasn't enough for Putin. Putin didn't take it. He just kept fighting. and which is what like people like myself and others have been like arguing on, angrily on the internet, for like years, against these like foreign policy realists who have this sort of sense that like in Vladimir Putin's mind, like what he really wants is like the Donbass and Luhansk and Crimea and just like a commitment from Ukraine to be like non-aligned or to be a neutral country, and that would just like basically diffuse the whole fucking thing. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. I mean, Putin has a like Putin the way that Putin views the Ukrainian people and has viewed the Ukrainian people since the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, there's like, he's, he's on record like as far back as like 1997 with his like views on the fact that Ukraine is like part of Russia, and the fact that the Ukrainians are like just he thinks they're confused Russians. That's what he thinks, right? Russia experts will tell you this. Ukrainians will tell you this. Like when if you look at what's being said in like Russian language media and the propaganda out of the Ukrainian government, you kind of get this sort of sense that the Ukrainians are really Russians that are sort of confused, and they've broken away and they don't really realize they're part of Mother Russia, and they're being confused by these like Western like CIA manipulated like politicians who've like sold out to the West and are confusing the Ukrainians from recognizing the fact that they're really Russians. That's like actually like how Putin sees it. That's how like that's his frame of the world. That's not an exaggeration. That's not me. That's not this is what he said. Like he wrote a letter, right? Like he wrote this like editorial, right? Like on the historical unity between Russians and Ukrainians, and he said this. And like people like David Mearsheimer and like David Sachs will basically like tell you, no, that's just him playing for domestic audience. What he just really wants is a commitment against like NATO, like Eastern expansion. Like this is nonsense. This is I mean, I don't know like why like Mearsheimer has convinced himself of this, but I mean he's wrong about this, and like anyone who's like from that part of the world and like understands like the culture and is able to sort of like follow the media environment knows this is fucking bullshit. This is bullshit. And David Sachs is he's a fascist, so I mean, Putinist fascist. Anyways, those are my views on that. Slava Ukraine. Yeah, so the other thing I've been really doing lately, I'm just like shooting this shit. I actually didn't know what I was going to talk about today, so I'm just raw dogging it. The other thing that I've been intensely trying to do, like I'm being transparent about this, is like I'm trying to I'm trying to just like speak from like a proudly like patriotic stance, where I'm proud of American progress and its history. I recognize America's failings, including the failings of today, but like recognizing that like the core ideas of America are like beautiful and that we should like love them and we should stand up for them. Like, I mean, I think this is I've long been uncomfortable with the fact that liberalism in the United States, and this is partly a response, this is partly like due to like globalization and social media, has sort of like taken on this sort of like cosmopolitan character where you sort of think of yourself as a world citizen, not an American. This is very typical in elites. You hear people fucking in Silicon Valley and Wall Street and shit like this, like say this like all the fucking time now. And it's a lie, right? Like no one's really a global citizen. Like, I mean, you need visas to go to other countries. I mean, there are obstacles to this, whether you think that should be the case or not. We do have social, cultural, and economic connections, right? Like back to our country, and they're very real. And we're feeling that now, right? We're feeling like what it means, like when those things are attacked, right? It's like very disorienting, and I think we've taken it for granted. So I really think that I'm doing something that like most liberals find very uncomfortable. This is very offensive to the cosmopolitan ideal of Ukraine, of liberals, right? Like to just sort of just be like really patriotic. But I am fucking patriotic. I mean, this is in my Flag on the Moon piece, right? I mean, and I want to be clear, right? I don't really like buy into this notion of American exceptionalism. I don't think that Americans are like somehow like, we don't have, there's no like, this isn't a country that was like touched by heaven or anything. This is a country that was like touched by an idea that like took form and grew into into the American Republic, and through self-government and social progress and all of the trials and tribulations of this country, the diversity of this country, and that when like I think like one of the things that the left has also done, right, is like they look at the civil rights era in the United States as an indictment of America's past rather than a celebration of the achievement of progress that a country is like capable of. Like we're like, isn't it awful that like women didn't used to have the right to vote? Yes, that is awful. What is also good is that like our system that liberal values as their internal contradictions were worked through, and like through freedom of expression and the press, and we had the suffragette movement. Like this is something we should be proud of. We've been like terrible, bigoted fucking people for thousands of years. And then in the last several hundred years, like we had the birth of like liberalism and the Enlightenment, and then a political project which has like actually enabled moral progress at a rate that has never been seen before. And so this self-flagellation that like liberals and like the left have had about like what an awful people we are. Did you know that we used to have slaves in this country? Well, did you know that like there were slaves in almost like every country in the world when this country was founded? And that's not to minimize slavery, but it's like, it's to make a point that like that there was a moral awakening in this country, and we fought a civil war over it. Abraham Lincoln was like, well, so like that, like the fact that that's all been, that the left's kind of cosmopolitan ideal has sort of changed the frame of like the fact, rather than seeing progress as something to be celebrated, progress is seen as evidence that we were sinful in the past, and this like weird like moral inversion, which yes has, in my opinion, if in my honest opinion, has played into the rise of fascism, because that moral inversion actually is really ripe for reactionary narrative. It allows reactionaries to basically pretend to be patriotic by saying they love the country because liberals won't. I don't love the country. Did you know we used to have slaves? Like that's like you just like immediately like, whereas someone like me who said like, yeah, we used to have slavery and I love this country because we overcame it. We fought a civil war and we had the civil rights movement, and I think MLK is a hero, right? Like, I mean, like there's like a way you can kind of like show up, to that conversation, but like liberals and the left decided to disarm themselves and basically not make those arguments anymore. Instead, like, you get like, you get this sort of like weird thing that's happened over the last 10 years where we have to reckon with ourselves and admit to ourselves how evil of a country we actually are. Well, I mean, like, yes, we've done lots of evil things. I mean, like, we're doing evil things right now. Look at the evil things our country's doing. The Cato Institute identified 50 people that we've illegally renditioned to a gulag in El Salvador. That's fucking evil. Our country's doing that right now. That's awful. Yet I'm still a patriot because like I believe that our country shouldn't do that. I mean, this is like the shift that the opposition to the fascists have to take in their rhetoric. This stance is very necessary. One, because like people, like we have a crisis of meaning. People don't know what they stand for anymore. People are lonely. They're like searching for religion. They're searching for, they're trying to find some way. Like why can't like love for country and love for, the idea of progress and pride in the progress that's been had, and optimism of the progress that we will have, like why can't that be at the center of meaning? I don't know why the left decided that this was a dangerous idea. In deciding it was a dangerous idea, they created the conditions for this epistemic collapse that we're now in. And you now have a bunch of people on the right who actually are not patriotic at all. You see this, they're not patriotic. They're fucking cynical as fuck. They're kleptocrats. They want to these fucking people in the Trump administration, they don't love this country. They don't, it's a joke. They perform patriotism like some cheap fucking trick to basically get, people who do love the country to believe them and vote for them so they can steal billions and billions of dollars from the taxpayer and engage in complicated schemes of regulatory capture to fuck this country literally over. I think that's traitorous. That's sedition. It's the opposite of patriotism. These people are fucking traitors, and most of them should be in jail based on what I can see right now. I mean, the amount of crimes that this White House and in this administration is committing is like unlike anything. Which brings me to my next thing that I want to talk about. I didn't know what I was going to talk about, but now I do. Moral clarity. It shouldn't be courageous to speak the truth, right? Like, it should be like, especially in a country with the First fucking Amendment. Here we are. We literally are living in a time where we're simply describing obvious corruption feels like radical at some level. George Stephanopoulos today on this morning on ABC, he kind of went out there with, he called it out, right? He compared the Trump administrations to post-Soviet kleptocracy. And there's like something uncomfortable about that. It's like, should a journalist be saying that? Like, isn't that a partisan thing to say? Like, Trump's like a criminal. Like he's corrupt. Is that fair? It's not only is that fair, it's the fucking truth. Like, we all see this happening, guys. Like, this idea that like being fair like requires us to like avoid naming the thing that we see, right? Is like that's what moral collapse looks like. We're living through moral collapse. We're living through a time where most of us, it's like notable. I've been laser focused on the media, and so when I wrote this piece on George Stephanopoulos, like, I was like reacting to something that I genuinely haven't seen before. I haven't seen it from Jake Tapper. I haven't seen it. It was just like calling it like it is and like using the words, and he fucking did it. Who knows if he's in trouble with his like higher ups at Disney? Like, I don't know if he went rogue or what, or maybe Disney has found some guts. Given the $16 million settlement that they had with Trump, I wasn't really hopeful of that. But that's like notable, and so yeah, like I applaud George Stephanopoulos, and if it was that his stance is supported by Disney, ABC. Don't know the status of their disposition there, then I applaud them. But like, yes, like this is exactly like how we should be talking about this. Trump coin is a fucking scam. It's a fraud. It's a fraud. They literally have stolen billions of dollars from people in a fucking Ponzi scheme. In clear public view. And there's like something weird about this. I know that people have talked about this before, but like when you do a crime in public, it just seems less bad than if you do it in private. It's like this weird psychological trick that it just seems to be true about humans. This sort of sense that the cover-up is worse than the crime. It's really not, actually. Often the crime is actually pretty fucking bad. But we have this bias. It's just weird. It's like all of this. It's like our psychology just thinks that like when you, maybe it makes sense, right? Because like, we're distrustful of secrecy, and we're trustful of things that we can see. And so there's this like weird thing that our brain does to us that like when we see crime just happening in front of our eyes, we're just like, oh, well, okay. But when we hear about a crime that happened in the middle of the night when no one was looking, we're like, well, fuck, are the police on it? So I mean, it's a really weird like cognitive bias, and it's interesting to watch how it's being exploited in real time. Like, I mean, the other thing here too is that I mean, a lot of people just like don't know this is going on. I mean, one of the things that is, I think a lot of you people, because you, I mean, if you're listening to me, you're like tuned into politics, and so this probably doesn't resonate with you, but um, I mean, a very large percentage of the adult voting American population is literally not following any of this. Like if you told them about the Qatar, like if you were to just like go on like a randomly just like go knocking on doors in like suburban like Philadelphia, and being like, have you heard about the Qatari jet that Trump is getting? They would be like, no, I haven't heard about it. Like they're probably like, you know, 60, 70% of households. I mean, like this is you know, another like aspect of sort of the psychological landscape that we find ourselves in that we don't really contend with, because that's another cognitive bias. You know, I'm not a psychologist, but you know, but like, you know, I try to think about, you know, I try to think about psychology a lot, right? When you're thinking about ethics and morality. Um, but these people just don't like, they don't have the perception that you and I do, um, because they're tuned out. And people are tuned out for different reasons. Like a lot of people who were tuned in decided to tune out after Donald Trump won the election. And a lot of those people won't tune back in until they're forced to, until shit starts to feel really, really bad. And you know, someone starts showing up at home and being like, "Honey, like there was nothing on the store shelves. I'm sorry, there was nothing there." You know, at that point, people might be like, "Well, fuck, is Trump responsible for this?" And then they might turn on the news. But like that, I mean, a lot of Americans are just like focusing on like sports and like, you know, binge watching Netflix, and they're actually actively trying to avoid knowing what's going on because it stresses them out. It's very stressful. And I wrote a piece a few weeks ago on America's psychological unreadiness for this. This is something that people have to kind of be like prepared for. And this has been seen, right? In other countries, you know, you've seen this in Hungary, within, you know, in Poland, is there is a moment where for the people who've decided to tune out because politics is just too stressful for them right now, when the situation will get so bad that they'll be forced to wake up, and then they'll be quite shocked at what they see because they've been tuning out, when they actually tune back in and they realize, holy fucking shit, all this was happening and I wasn't paying attention. That's actually going to like really damage a lot of people's mental health. And a lot of those people, that's going to like, that's going to create a lot of stress and despair among people. And this is like a phenomenon that's like well understood by like people who like study this stuff. And so that shock is like still coming. I mean, I have like sort of like rhetorically like referred to this as like the ground is approaching, like we're, you know, we're falling. We are falling, and and what I mean by that is like the ground is the point at which you can't ignore reality. You can ignore reality while you're in free fall, right? There's really no consequences to moving your arms this way or that way. But when you hit the ground, there's a lot of consequences to how you move, isn't there? And that's sort of like where we're flowing. And so, I mean, we're still right at the early stages, right, of the trade disruption. Now, these tariffs may have been put on pause, but one of the things that is still true is that Trump disrupted the supply chain. There's a giant bubble in the supply chain that is making its way through the hose. That is like only now starting to like emerge, where we're going to start seeing like supply shortages as a result of what happened like 2 months ago, basically, because of the lead times. It takes like these ships like, you know, many weeks to make it from China to ports on the U.S. West Coast. And so we're in the beginning stages of feeling a little bit of that supply shock. And so, that's going to be like one of these things where I think Americans are going to start seeing price pressures, shortages. Manufacturers are already like, we do a lot of final assembly in the United States, but like, the intermediate goods supply chain, which like fucking like 90% of it like touches China in some way, was like heavily disrupted. When Trump put those like 149% or whatever tariffs, I don't remember what they were. And that like caused like a complete like cessation in trade for like several days. Like that has like serious like knock-on effects that we're gonna feel in the coming months. Um, so I mean, and I don't know, like I'm not an economist. I read a lot of economists. I try to read a lot of the perspectives on a lot of macroeconomists on what they think will happen. I think the consensus right now is that inflation's like gonna be pretty high come the fall. Those forces have been set in motion, and there's like really nothing to stop it now. Whether we have a recession or not, I mean, obviously that one's like more contentious, but yeah, I mean, there's another bout of inflation coming, and that's a result of Trump's tariffs. Not to mention the secondary effects of the fact that we're no longer we're no longer like the world's premier destination for safe investments anymore. We just gave that up for like no fucking reason at all, and that's gonna hurt Americans. It's gonna make it more expensive to borrow in the United States because less demand for dollars, less demand for treasuries like worldwide, means that U.S. consumers are going to have to pay higher interest rates to borrow. Once again, because Donald Trump decided to try and like move America towards autarky. So that's that's where we find ourselves, right? Wow, I've been talking for like 50 minutes now or something. Anyways, I've said a lot of things. You want to maybe maybe I can take some like questions or comments from the chat room. It's always fun. What are people talking about? Penny, it's a death cult, Mike. All morals are relative. I mean, I don't know. I would say it's like a death cult. I mean, but they certainly have like some advanced like diagnosis, in my opinion, of Dunning-Kruger, of the Dunning-Kruger effect. They're a lot dumber than they think, and they don't know what they do not know, and they are about to get a rude awakening. Howard Coombe says, America will be a criminal country until President Taco Donald Trump is dead or in jail, at which point the next Democratic POTUS will put America on the right path. Well, I mean, I bristle at being called a criminal country. The country is just an institution. It's made up of people. Donald Trump is not the United States. He is one branch of three branches of our government, and I am angry, very angry, as an American that Donald Trump is president, that he is committing these crimes, and I agree with you that he should be in jail. But I mean, the threat is like, the thing is, we don't really have much time to get into it now because I only had an hour. But some of the people around Donald Trump are like far more dangerous than he is. I would actually be a lot more afraid if like Stephen Miller were president, or JD Vance for that matter were president. Actually, it's like one of those things where I actually don't know. I actually don't know if I was in Congress and I would impeach Donald Trump, knowing that JD Vance would become president if I removed him from office. because JD Vance has explicit designs on overthrowing the Constitution. I mean, he's talked about this. He subscribes to Curtis Yarvin's ideology, and so you're like, well, do you choose between like the competent like fascist JD Vance who has an ideological project of basically like defanging the Supreme Court and Congress and establishing monarchy? That's pretty fucking scary. I mean, I don't know how to like. I don't know. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't really have an ideology per se. He's a gangster, and that's very bad. And being ruled by a gangster is very scary, especially for people like me who are talking out against him all the time. But in the grand scope of things, I mean, like, I think JD Vance is more likely to have me killed than Donald Trump would. I don't think Donald Trump's the kind of person who has people killed. I actually think he's kind of a coward. I don't think he does. Like, I think he's like, I think he has other people do his dirty business for him. You see this and people he's had in his orbit. But I mean, like JD Vance is like way more evil, way more evil. He's a sociopath as far as I can tell. Donald Trump's not a sociopath, but he's a narcissist, and it's choosing between a sociopath and a narcissist is obviously like not the kind of choice that you want to be like being forced to make. But like this is like the situation we're in. This is it's really fucked up situation that we're in, America. Like, just so you know, like this is scary. Will just got back from Toronto, had a lot of fun. I think Canada will hoover up international students and researchers. I mean, the brain drain from American academia and research is insane. I never would have believed that I'd see this day. Like America was like where all the world's best researchers wanted to come. Now all the best researchers are, including American-born researchers, want to leave. It's like something like 70% of like I can't remember. I don't know if it was like medical like scientist. I remember what it was, but there was 70% of like some community of researchers that like responded like yes to like was it a Science Daily poll or something, that they were like actively like considering moving out of the country to like Canada or Europe to pursue their research. That's bad. It's very bad for the United States that this administration has like in just a few months taken America from the just like undisputedly premier destination in the world for education and research and like just giving it up. It's like, I mean, like, who does that? Well, fascists do that because they hate intellectuals. And I mean, it's ultimately like long term, like why fascism is a self-destructive project, right? Fascist regimes, I don't think they have the potential to last long term. Maybe one leader generation, and then they generally like implode because like they want to remove the distance between power and truth, which means that like power is truth, and that means that if you're not pursuing truth, the regime is less adaptable to shocks and exigent factors in the stability of the regime. And there's like, you can get an information theory about how like complex adaptive systems and stuff. But like, I mean, I'm not going to like completely geek out here, but like, I mean, fascist regimes are fundamentally unstable, but they also have the feature of being surprisingly attractive to uneducated people. So, I mean, fascist regimes are essentially nations committing suicide. Is another way to think about it. All right, what else? What else are people saying here? Hitting the ground can kill you unless the ground is the bog of eternal stench, in which case you're facing other issues. Well, thank you, Howard. You apologize for calling America criminal. Well, I mean, no apology needed. I mean, I get what you meant. Any other comments or questions, or we can end this right now. I'll go back to what's left of my day here in beautiful Los Angeles. All right, let's uh, let's say goodbye. Lots of love to everybody. Remember that. Well, what do I want to say? How should I sign off? I'm usually not. I mean, I'm usually not at a loss for words, but I mean, I will say that I love all of you, people who are committed to truth and to this conversation, and look forward to doing this all again. So, for Frodo, we rebel. Thanks, everybody.